for use with an AMA gearbox. This valve can be rotated on 90-degree increments. Basically what you do is take the 4 bolts out of the bottom of the neck, take that adapter plate off, rotate that 90 degrees, 180 or 270, whichever you need. Reinstall the adapter plate to the gearbox, put your 4 bolts back in the neck. It has the mechanical close stop, same as the PEC valve, position indicator for the electric motor. It also has a position indicator for the gearbox. These are the Dezurik vendor instructions from AMA for use with the SA through SA 48.1 and the SAR 7.1 through the SAR 30.1. Just a little bit better detailing. Here is your position indicator for the electric motor operator. If you have moisture in those areas, contact Dezurik or AMA directly and we can get that rectified. Of course, in order to engage your hand wheel, lift that lever, and that'll allow you to manually operate that valve. This is just some technical information of the operating instructions for these electric motor operators. We're going down to limit setting and torque switch setting. Kind of a nice little feature that the AMA has is it's a plug and play is what they call it. This is where the conduit enters the actuator, the electric motor operator, and if you ever have to remove that motor for repairs, water damage, it's got to be sent back to the factory. You can remove those 4 screws, uncap that cover, and send your motor operator in while still leaving all your wire terminations connected. This just describes how to get into the limit and torque switch settings, removing the switch compartment cover. Basically, you just remove those 4 bolts or Allen screws. Depending on the size of the electric motor, they vary between bolts and screws. Setting the limit switches. Turn hand wheel clockwise until valve is closed. We're obviously going to set the closed limit switch. After reaching the end of position, turn back hand wheel approximately a half a turn. This is to compensate for motor windup or coasting. During test run, check overrun and, if necessary, correct setting of the limit switch. On your electric motor operators you have out in the plant, you do not have these auxiliary limit switches. You just have the 2 standards. You'll see that they're teardrop shape on both the open and the closed, and you'll see an identification mark which is C and F in the instruction manual. This is the open limit, this is the closed limit. If you have any questions, refer to the owner's manual on how to adjust if you need help while doing it. Basically, for the closed limit, you press down on A, turn that counterclockwise or clockwise depending on this rotation during your hand wheel stroking. And you want to turn B until it's just before the dot C. Once it hits the dot C, you went too far, you'll have to continue turning A. I believe it's 16 turns until B gets close to C, but you don't want it to get right to it. Go more in depth after you're reading the instructions. If you have any questions, you can once again call Dezurik and we can walk you through it. The same thing can be done on the open side. Matter of pushing your D clutch in, letter D, and turning that in the proper rotation it should go until your teardrop is just about to the dot. If it comes close, you went too far. Go to page 17 in the AMA book if you want to learn how to set the torque switches. All Dezurik valves are set for limit, to close on limit, and to open on limit. They're not set for torque. We do not want to cause any premature damage to the plug or the internals of the valve body. So that's why we set them on limit. Torque switch must suit the valve. Obviously, if the valve continues to torque out after you've made adjustments and you're at the maximum, there's issues internally, either with the electric motor, the gear, and or the valve. They will have to be addressed separately with removal of preferably the electric motor and then the gearbox. If you're still having torque issues, it's just a matter of breaking it down until you figure out which is which. Checking the torque switches, the red test buttons, T and P, are used for the manual operator of the torque switches. Once the torque switches are set at the factory, 9 times out of 10 you'll never have to adjust them again, along with the limit switches. If you are experiencing constant leakage, it might not be a limit switch or torque switch adjustment. There might be damage on the plug valve or the BAW seat. Now we're going to cover the Dezurik vendor instructions for the AMA part turn gearboxes. We're in gearboxes GS 50.3 through GS 250.3 for flange types FA. A little bit better drawing. It shows a hand wheel on this manual gearbox instead of electric motor, which is all you have out on the plant. You got your 8 bolts on the cover, along with 2 bolts that go through this plate, your position indicator, into the bowl gear of the actuator. Here are the 4 screws. There's one on each corner. If you loosen those up, turn this hand wheel. That's how you adjust your mechanically closed position. Table of contents, safety, technical data. Different technical data, some torque outputs, end stops. Transport, storage, obviously if the valve's already installed, you don't have to worry about that. Different mounting instructions on different versions on each actuator, how you'd like to mount it and the direction. Some more technical data as far as different sizing of gearboxes. You may have more than one size of gearbox, even though they're fairly similar in size. This just covers mounting the gearbox to the valve itself. As described in our previous drawings, we know how that is mounted from the valve of the neck to the adapter plate to the gearbox. Now setting, no matter if you have a modulating valve or an open and closed valve, the end stops are going to be the same on the gearbox no matter what the actuator output is. If it's an open close, the end stops are the same as if it's a modulating valve. Once again, we close all of our valves on limit and not torque. But being this, we're dealing with the gearboxes, you're going to go until you hit the close stop position. Different spare parts list is located on each different size of gearboxes. Right now we're looking at GS 160.3 through GS 250.3. You do not have that size of gearboxes, so you'll have to go up to the menu that details the size that you're looking at, which is described on the AMA nameplate on the AMA gearbox. So if you're ever wondering what size of gearbox you have, look at the nameplate and just compare it to the size you're looking at in the instruction manual. Right there is an overview of everything you have purchased on these orders from Dezurik. If you have any questions, feel free to call us directly. go to the Dezurik website, contact Alma directly, or you can come through Dezurik. If you have any questions, thank you very much. This is an 8-inch Dezurik plug valve with a G-series actuator. You got your closed adjusting stop. If you want to back the stop out, remove the jam nut, back the stop out, reapply your jam nut. You got your pointer position indicator, 2-inch square. Here's the bevel screws along with the stud bolt. Inside, if you look in here, you'll have the packing gland, your packing adjusting studs, and your packing nuts. There's one on each side. Adjust those evenly to compress your packing gland down flat. Chain wheel guide. On the side of the actuator itself, you'll find the Dezurik black and silver tag with the part number and the work order number. If you ever have any problems with anything internally or externally with the valve, call Dezurik and give them that part number. You got your bonnet tag, which says do not remove bonnet with pressure in the valve. If you remove these bolts, your bonnet could blow off due to whatever pressure's in the line. Here's an Alma 4-inch plug valve. Once again, the Dezurik tag on the side of the actuator. An Alma gearbox along with an Alma motor. If you want to adjust the mechanical close stop on this Alma gearbox, back off these 4 set screws. This will allow this cap to rotate. Readjust your position, tighten those back up, and your Alma mechanical stops on your gearbox will then be set. You will then have to redo the Alma limits internally. We'll go to a different Alma gearbox to make that a little bit easier to see. That's really about it for these. This is a Dezurik plug valve, 2-inch nut. Once again, the Dezurik tag. Adjusting screws for your gland, your open stop, closed stop. Here's your stud with your Belleville washers and your nut internally. This has approximately that much slop or rotation. This valve is set correctly. Okay. This is an Alma electric motor operator. We want to get access to the open limit switches and the torque settings. We're not going to change anything. Once you remove the cover, set that aside. This position indicator just slides off the shaft. The center shaft will turn. Here is your closed stop, your closed limit, your open limit. Here is the teardrop we discussed earlier while looking at the drawings. There's a dot on the open and the closed side. You want that teardrop just to be in front of that dot. You press down on this internal screw, rotate that. There's an arrow on both the open and closed which describes which way to turn that screw to reset your limit. We're not going to change these limits since they're already preset. We're just going to open it up for description purposes. Reapply your indicator cover. Put your cover back on. Reinstall your 4 screws. Okay. Next, we're going to look at the switch package. This is a Stone L position indicator switch. When removing this cover and reinstalling it, be careful not to cross thread the cover. Here is the top cam and the lower cam. The top is your closed, lower is your open. To reset, if this is not closing the switch, push down the cam, rotate in either direction, and allow the cam to come back up on its own. They're real fine teeth, so the cam will position itself. You put the cover back on. If you're still not getting proper closing and opening, underneath the switch, you'll see a square stop bolt. The square adapting bolt is attached to the jam nut that goes to the shaft that goes internally. That jam nut might be loose on the square adapting block. Tighten that and you should get a proper connection. That's it. Thank you very much.